Welcome back to a course on complex analysis. In the previous lecture, we have seen the proof of Goursat's lemma. Okay, so before getting into today's topic, that is Cauchy Goursat theorem, let me just give you the glimpse of what we have seen in Goursat's lemma. Here, in a region, if a function is analytic, okay, in a closed region, if a function is analytic, then this clearly implies, this analyticity implies the continuity of the derivative of the function. So this is what we have proved in the Goursat lemma. How did we achieve it? Okay, so let us if you see, what is the definition of a continuous function? That is, if limit z approaches z naught, f of z equals f of z naught, then we say that the function is continuous at z naught. This is one way of defining the continuity. Okay, here we are talking about the limit. What that is, if limit z approaches some point f of z equals L, means for given epsilon positive, there exists a delta positive such that just a minute, let me change the color, such that absolute of f of z minus L less than epsilon whenever 0 less than absolute of x, sorry, z minus a less than delta. Okay, so this is the definition of a limit. So we have the epsilon delta condition for the limit, and with the help of the limit we have the concept of continuous function. Okay, so here we are actually trying to prove the continuity of the derivative of the function f. So here we know that by the definition of derivative, limit z approaches z j, f of z minus f of cj upon z minus zj is f prime of zj, right? So in the place of f of z you have this quantity, and in the place of f of z naught you have f prime of zj. Okay, just plug in this information into it, okay, into this epsilon delta condition. Okay, so that is what we have here. Okay, this epsilon is here, you have this whenever condition, right? So that is what we proved by taking the neighborhood, and with the help of neighborhood we have spoken these things, right? So the maximum distance in a square is its diameter. We have chosen the diameter to be a smaller quantity than delta. So the maximum distance between any two points on this square is smaller than delta. Therefore, your delta condition is true. Whenever this condition is true, we say that this limit exists and this condition is satisfied. So with which we have proved the derivative of f is continuous in some square. Okay, and the point is a j is an arbitrary point in the square, which means it is true, we can choose any point, right? So it is true for an arbitrary point in a square, therefore it must be true for the entire square. The entire region can be made is covered by finite number of squares and partial squares. Since it is true for all the points on the squares and the partial squares, it must be true in the entire region. So this is what we proved in Goursat's theorem. Okay, now how are we going to apply Goursat's theorem to prove this result? That is, if a function is given to be analytic at all points interior to and on a simple closed contour C, then we'll have to prove integral over C f of z dz is 0. Okay, for which what are we going to do? Okay, let us start with an arbitrary quantity. Given any arbitrary positive number epsilon, we consider the covering of the region R in the Goursat's lemma. Okay, as said in the Goursat's lemma, we'll have to take some covering of the region R. Okay, now we are about to define a function. We are defining a function on the jth square. So we are saying it as the finite collection of squares and partial squares on the jth square, or be it partial square also, that is not an issue, right? So in the jth subregion, we are defining a function delta j of z whose values are delta j of zj is equal to 0, where zj is the fixed point in the inequality 1. So what is the inequality 1? The result that we have proved in the Goursat's lemma. Here in Goursat's lemma we have so we have taken this quantity to be the equation 1, and somewhere we have equation 2 as well, right? So I'm just going to continue this numbers for this theorem also, because these are continuation. When this is asked in part C question, you will have to state and prove Goursat theorem, Goursat's lemma, and then you will have to prove this Goursat theorem. If you are asked to prove this Goursat theorem, you will have to prove Goursat's lemma as well. So I'm just continuing the numbers. So this is Zj is the fixed point in the inequality 1. Okay. So if it is so, okay, this is in 1, and we have not still completely defined what is this delta j of z, right? So and that is delta j of z is nothing but f of z minus f of zj upon z minus zj minus f prime of zj when z is not equal to zj. When you give z equals zj, you would get this quantity to be 0. This makes this quantity to be an undefined one. So we don't want that to happen. That is why we are choosing this way. We mark this as equation 4. Right? Next, according to the inequality 1, what happens? According to the inequality 1, equation 4 gives absolute of delta j of zj is smaller than epsilon, and we mark this as equation 5. This is happening to be true at all points z in the subregion of R in which delta j of z is defined. Where we have defined this function, there it is happening to be true. So this is what we are trying to say, right? And also the function delta j of z is continuous throughout the region since f of z is continuous. So all of the points in the expression are constants. Only f of z is the variable quantity. So we can check the continuity of f of z, so that we can talk about the continuity of delta j of z. Okay, and we write limit z approaches zj of delta j of z is nothing but limit z approaches zj f of z minus f of zj upon z minus cj minus f prime of cj. Okay, so we are applying limit to this. So this is limit z approaches zj, f of c minus f of cj upon z minus cj minus limit z approaches zj, f prime of cj, and this is by the definition of a derivative. This is f prime evaluated at cj. This is independent of c, so it is the same quantity as it is. So we get this quantity to be 0. Okay, so we just note this one. Next, uh, we let cj with j runs from 1 to n denote the positively oriented boundaries of the above squares or partial squares. So with the help of these squares and partial squares only, we are covering the region R, right? So covering R. Okay. Now with the help of the definition of delta J, that is, we know that delta J of C is nothing but f of C minus f of Cj upon Z minus Cj minus f prime of Cj. So with which what I can do is that z minus zj delta j of c is f of c minus f of cj minus z minus zj multiplied with f prime of cj. So from this, if you deduce what is the value of f of z, you see that f of z is z minus cj delta j of z plus f of zj plus z minus zj multiplied with f prime of cj. Okay, so with this ideas, we can write integral over cj f of z dz as integral over cj. What was the first expression? That is z minus cj delta j of c dz plus integral over cj f of, so you may very well see here, that is f of f prime of cj. Hope I am not wrong. Sorry, f of cj alone, right? Not f prime. F of cj dz plus integral over cj. Then we have c minus c zj multiplied with f prime of cj dz, right? Okay, let us see what happens here. Observe, this is a constant. Okay, this is a linear function in z. Okay, linear function, since zj is a constant and this is a constant, so as when you see it together, you can notice that this is a linear function, right? So linear function with no denominator, this clearly tells us that this is analytic. Okay, this is an analytic function. So if it is analytic, this clearly tells you that this possesses antiderivative. Okay, Cj is a square or partial square. So where it starts, it ends there itself. So by the theorem on antiderivatives, you can come to a conclusion that this integral value is 0. Okay. In a similar way, constant is also analytic function which possesses antiderivative. This is also 0. So what we are left with is that integral over Cj f of z dz is integral over Cj z minus Cj delta j of z dz, right? And this is true for j running from 1 to n. This is our equation 7. We mark this as equation. Just a minute. Yeah. So we mark this as equation 7, but before that we mark this as equation 6. Or if you, okay, let it be, no issues. Okay. The sum of all n integrals on the left in equation 7. So we'll have to take the sum. Summation j runs from 1 to n integral over cj f of z dz. This may be written as what? So if you just see, so we have something of this sort. Okay, so let us take this as a particular example and see what happens. So I am talking about this c1, c2, c3, c4, c5, c6, c7, c8, c9, c10, c11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So I get something of this sort, right? So okay, now I just come to the interior parts. uh, I'm not bothering about the exterior parts. Now let me pay my attention only to the interior parts and see what happens. Okay, suppose I take the square. Here the square is considered in this way. In this rotation I have considered. Now when I consider this square, I would have uh, considered it in this way. Everything in the positive direction. So the same line here, if you see, just a minute, let me change this to laser pointer. Okay, so when you see here, the same line is considered in right, left to right, as well as from right to left. So when you do an integration along the line for two times, one side in the positive sense and other time in the negative sense, they get cancelled, right? In a similar way, if you consider, okay, now let me do it in different color. So if you consider this partial one, you get this one and this one, and along this curve. So again this line, okay, here you have a line, right? So this line is considered twice, one side in the up down and the other in the down up. It gets cancelled. Similarly here also it is in this direction, then this. So all these, here what I'm trying to convey is all the lines which are inside the region is counted twice, one in the positive sense, other in the negative sense. So you will be left with only the curves on the contour. Okay. So finally what you will be left with is that this is integral over c f of z dz, right? This is happening since the two integrals along the common boundary of every pair of adjacent subregions cancel each other. So this is the reason why we are getting only this is equal to integral over C f of z dz, right? So by equation 7, what we have is integral over C f of z dz is summation j runs from 1 to n integral over cj z minus cj delta j of z dz. Okay, so if that is so, with which what can we write? We can write absolute of integral over c f of c dz is equal to summation j runs from 1 to n integral over cj absolute of z minus cj delta j of z dz, and this is integral over c1 z minus z1 delta j of delta 1 of z dz plus integral over c2 z minus z2 delta 2 of z dz, and it goes till integral over cn z minus zn delta n of c dz, and you can now apply the triangle inequality. So it is equivalent to integral over c1 z minus z1 delta 1 of z dz plus integral over c2 z minus z2 delta 2 of z dz, and plus etc. till integral over cn z minus zn delta n of c dz, right? So this may be written as, so from all these things what we write is that integral over c f of c dz is smaller than or equal summation j runs from 1 to n absolute of integral over cj z minus zj delta j of z dz, and we mark this as equation 8. Okay, now we are we make use of ml inequality to estimate the RHS of equation 8. Okay, so for which let us recall each Cj coincides either entirely or partially with the boundary of a square. So in order to calculate the length of length of Cj, we must know the perimeter of a square, for which we need the side of a square. Let Sj denote the length of side of the square, and Aj denote the area of the square. Okay, so we are taking in this way. Okay, let that be there as it is. Okay, for any 2 points z1 and z2 in a square, the distance between them is smaller than or equal to the diagonal of the square. So the diagonal value is the largest possible distance between any 2 points in a square. So with which what we write is that absolute of z minus cj is smaller than or equals under root 2 sj. So that is, if you have this as your square, okay, this is taken to be sj, this is taken to be sj. So if you consider the value of ac, which is under root sj squared plus sj squared, which is nothing but under root 2 times of sj. So that is what we have written here. Okay, so next what? So we'll have to estimate the integrand, that is absolute of z minus cj multiplied with delta j of z. This is absolute of z minus cj multiplied with absolute of delta j of z. First quantity is smaller than or equals under root 2 times of sj, and this is epsilon, right? So that is strictly less than epsilon, so we lost this inequality. See, we mark this as equation 9. Okay, now we'll have to find out the length of the jth square. Length of the jth square, if it is a complete square, what is the length? It is 4 times of sj. Okay, now we write by ml inequality that absolute of cj f of c dz, sorry, uh, z minus cj delta j of c dz is smaller than or equals m. M value is what? It is absolute of uh, m is z minus zj delta j of z, and the length is 4sj. So this is smaller than under root 2 times of sj epsilon multiplied with 4sj, which is 4 times of under root 2 sj square times of epsilon. So this sj square is nothing but aj, that is 4 under root 2 times of aj epsilon. So we mark this as equation 10, right? Now if cj is the boundary of partial square, then its length does not exceed 4sj plus lj, where lj is the length of the part of cj which is a part of c also. Okay, that means if you are talking, okay, let me change the color. If you are talking about this particular square, okay, this part is there, right? So the length of this part is we take it as Lj. Okay, and the side as usual we take it as Sj. Okay, when you complete the square, you are going to get something of this sort. So your total length will not exceed 4Sj plus Lj. That is what we write here. Okay, so again here Sj is the side of the square and Aj denotes the area of the complete square. So what we get here is that absolute of integral Cj z minus zj delta j of z dz is smaller than, here the maximum estimate of this quantity is under root 2 times of Sj epsilon, and the length is 4Sj plus Lj. So this is smaller than 4 under root 2 times of Sj squared epsilon plus under root 2 times of Sj Lj epsilon, right? So here if S is the side of any square that covers entire R, then what? S is, of course, Sj is smaller than big S, right? So with which what we can write is that absolute of Cj z minus zj delta j of z dz is smaller than 4 under root 2 aj epsilon plus under root 2 s lj epsilon. We mark this as equation 11, right? So now we are about to complete the proof actually. If L denotes the length of the entire contour C, then from equation 8, 10, 10 and 11, that then from these three things we get absolute of C f of z dz is smaller than 4 times of under root 2. So if we take S to be the largest square which contains this quantity, then of course it is Sj square. This shall be replaced with S squared epsilon plus here under root 2 SL epsilon. So epsilon can be taken out as a common quantity from both the things. So this is what we get. Okay. So with those ideologies we have constructed this one. Now as usual, since epsilon is an arbitrary quantity, we see in absolute of integral f of z dz is equal to 0. This proves integral over c f of z dz is 0, and this completes the proof. Okay, in the upcoming lecture we are going to see some extension, that is the extension of Cauchy Goursat theorem in simply connected domain and multiply connected domain, followed by which we will work out few problems on these topics. Thank you.